Hey guys, it's Jim Halterman with Coffee Tea Me on Substack, and I'm here with my buddy Scott Huber, whose book comes out. I mean, it's Tuesday here in Bangkok, so technically it's publishing day, or is that what they call it, publishing day?
Yeah.
So I don't have a copy of the book with me. Do you have one handy so we can see the cover?
Yeah, the author gets them a little early.
Yeah. Oh, see, it's a good looking cover. I do like that cover. I remember you showing me that a while ago, and it just is like the epitome of what the cover should be because it kind of tells you exactly what it is. And I can't remember the exact point where you first told me you were actually going to write this, but you've always been somebody that has a lot of tales and stories, and you know a lot about Hollywood and the craziness of it. When did you actually decide, yes, I'm going to write this book?
Well, the idea has been percolating for 30 years, like since I first moved to Los Angeles and was working at a newspaper in Beverly Hills. I've been almost as a hobby assembling stories, like finding them, doing research just for fun, and
Yeah.
certain stories that I'd come across before, like I just needed to know how they ended, like what the totality of the thing was. So I've been doing this for ages, and here and there I would, take a stab at writing a chapter. And but it was finally like the pandemic was when I had the time.
Uh, yeah.
And you know, we were all figuring out what to do with ourselves during that period. And my wife Cynthia, who said, "You really should, get on that book. You've got the time to do it." And I said, "Okay." And that's when I really got serious and put together a proposal and put together some real runs at full chapters, like as detailed as I could get them. And process went on from there, and here we are.
And now the book is called Beverly Hills Noir. Did you have to stick to stories that were in Beverly Hills, or did you kind of be a little loose with that? Because LA in itself is nutty, but Beverly Hills is specific as well. But talk about that a little bit.
That was sort of my self-imposed rule. Was it had to have taken place in Beverly Hills. Now some of these
Okay.
stories go all over the world, like they get crazy.
Yeah.
um they extend, or they start somewhere else, end in Beverly Hills. But I wanted the gist of the crime to have happened right there in that very unique city, which is only about 5 square miles. Like it's not very
Yeah.
big at all.
It's not big.
um but they have some big crimes historically. So I picked some of my favorites from the last century, and hopefully I'll get to tell more. But these were ones I was especially enamored of.
They're so fun. Did you have any kind of old Hollywood books that you just kind of idolized that kind of helped you shape the book or the tone of the book and how you were going to tell these stories?
Yeah, I mean the granddaddy of them all, which I probably read when I was 18 or 19, was Hollywood Babylon.
Of
Um,
course.
Very dishy, very like no holds barred, um, very snarky. I didn't quite want to go that far out, and it could be a little gruesome at points. And
Yeah.
but this, I wanted this one. I wanted to tell these stories. I've called it like Vanity Fair style. I really wanted to dig in, and get as much detail as I could and make the reader feel like they were in the room or the mansion in most
Yeah.
cases
Yeah.
where it happened. And so, that definitely inspiration came from like Dominic Dunn, who wrote for Vanity Fair forever.
Yeah.
Um, I liked, I've been a big fan of James Elroy for many years, and so I liked
Yeah.
his sort of hard-boiled style, and then some of the
Yeah.
masters like Chandler and Hammett. And I wanted to give that sort of pulp storytelling kind of feel
Yeah.
to these stories.
You definitely did. That's why I was like, "Oh, this is so fun to read." I've still got a couple chapters to get to, but it's a fun read. That's what you want.
Well,
Um,
what's great is with Beverly Hills, the tone shifts. There's like
yeah,
some of these stories are kind of hilarious, even though there's like a crime at the core of them. They get a little
yeah,
absurd,
yeah,
because of the world that they take place in. So,
yeah. Well, talk about Greystone. Greystone. I was some for some reason Greystoke always wants to come out, but it's Greystone. Greystone.
No,
Yeah, but that one, that's almost 100 years old since that crime took place. So for from a research perspective, where do you go for that? I don't know if there's people still around. I mean, it's a long time ago, but talk about how you told that story specifically.
yeah, well, what's interesting, is that is one that is it's pretty embedded in local lore. So I'd written about it a couple different times over the last 3 decades and gotten bits and pieces and sort of knew the overview of it, and I wanted to determine if that was the first murder in Beverly Hills, which it does seem to be to the best of my investigating. It's the first, and it's a murder suicide. So like
Yeah,
Beverly Hills does big,
that's right. They don't mess around.
but that was a lot of like what over the years because that's when I have been sort of picking up jigsaw pieces, puzzle pieces, like whatever. So I've done the microfiche down at the LA Public Library. I've got books galore that I've consulted. I will, I'd sit and go through like newspapers.com was a great resource. And just, I've talked
Uh,
to a few people who knew things and I've been up there myself several times and inside the house. And
yeah.
so yeah, it was really finding the memoir of Les White, who is sort of we see in my telling of the story, we kind of see it through his eyes.
Okay.
And he was the investigator for the LADA's office, who handled sort of the forensics of the crime
Uh,
scene and the bodies. And his version of events, and he's a pretty straight shooter. Finding his memoir and getting his version of events and seeing how contrary they were to what the original, you know,
uh,
determination was, which was kind of everybody sort of suspected it even at the time that it felt a little off. Um, that that provided a really detailed window into that period. And then yeah,
okay.
I've just got Beverly Hills history books and Hollywood
I love it.
true crime history books and you name it. I dug into everything I had.
And what's funny, one of my questions, and it was almost a joke, was did you ever have to look at microfiche? But it sounds like you did, because I'm sure a lot of that stuff is there.
I luckily again in the past I had done a lot of that out of my own curiosity. I didn't need to do it. I wanted to do it at the Beverly Hills Public Library, but they've just eliminated their their microfiche system for the most part, and
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that they used to have in their archives they don't anymore. I was
Oh,
surprised they
wow.
didn't even have like the two still existing local newspapers. They're like, oh, you should
Yeah.
call them, and I'm like, well, I've worked for both of them, and I can guarantee I'm not
Oh,
going to have any more luck there than I am having here. Luckily, I
wow.
save a lot of things, so.
Okay. Tell me about the Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, that whole story, which I don't know if I remember hearing about the summit. You always hear about the Rat Pack, but I just thought that was a detail in there that I didn't know. But also, I know you've talked to relatives or offspring of both of them, I think. Um,
Yeah, over the years, not for the book specifically, but over the years, I've spoken to Dean Martin's daughter Dina, and Frank's daughter Tina.
yeah.
I've asked directly, like Dina and I had a whole conversation about because she wrote about it in her memoir
Uh,
about this particular case, and it's one that you don't get in every Sinatra biography, but it's one that I'd heard of at some point and started digging into it and finding all the little bits and pieces. And it's also one where the story gradually revealed itself over decades.
yeah. Yeah.
No charges were ever filed in it. So the solution has been kind of elusive until recent years. And then I did manage to contact um, Sinatra's old PR manager who had an
Wow.
active hand in kind of making sure that that story went away as best it could. And he kind of gave me his version of events and it lined up with some others, so it's still a little like mysterious, but it
Yeah.
was fun telling it in kind of a Rashomon style of
Yeah.
like because there were conflicting accounts of this barroom brawl in Polo Lounge, like the nicest bar in Beverly Hills for decades and
So
decades.
funny. I love it. Was there anybody that didn't want stories told? Like you always see like in the movies and stuff where you're somebody's digging for a story and there's somebody absolutely does not want to tell their story. But did you encounter that? Some of these stories are either already very famous or they're old enough that you would think who cares? But was there resistance from anybody you wanted to talk to?
I can't recall, mostly because I was on such a tight deadline. And again, there was a lot of available research and there were a lot of dead people.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really talked, I talked to some of the retired Beverly Hills police officers who worked on some of these cases. I have a number of cases that I wrote that I couldn't fit into the book and are waiting for hopefully a second volume. But
yeah.
I talked to a lot of cops, and luckily, I either knew them a long time ago and they trusted me, or one of them would vouch for me with another, which made it the path a little easier. Um, you know, I'm sure, I expect that Winona Ryder and her people aren't going to be super thrilled, but this was also a bit of my own story.
Right.
Um, because I covered it. I was in the courtroom just about every day. So I didn't, and I found all my original notes. So that
Oh,
made that
wow.
kind of a fun, different type of story to type of a minor character on the side.
Yeah. But that's why we keep our notes forever and ever. Like I come across old interviews in my computer and things. I'm like, I don't need that. And I'm like, but no, don't erase that because you don't know when you might. Something might come up, and
I don't
you
know,
keep all that.
I was taking handwritten notes at the time.
Of
This was
course,
like
yeah.
2002, and you couldn't record in the courtroom. And I don't know when I had the presence of mind to transcribe my notes into a Word
Wow,
doc, but I
that's
did
great.
at some point, and I found them just as I was starting up writing that chapter. I found them on my laptop, so that was a good because I found a ton of little details
Okay.
that I was happy to have discovered.
I was actually going to ask you that. Like, since I knew you were there for that trial, when you went back to it, did you find new things or things you had forgotten? It sounds like you did.
Yeah, there's one weird. It's just such an unusual. It's not super consequential, but it's such an unusual detail, um, that one day the character actor Tracy Walter, who probably is best known for being in Jonathan Demme movies and playing Bob the Goon in the Tim Burton Batman movie,
Yeah,
he just
yeah.
showed up, to watch the trial. He just showed up as a member of the public, and it
Really?
just made everything that much more weird because I'm sitting there and like there's Winona Ryder sitting at the defense table. There's Peter Guber sitting in the jury, the former head of Sony Pictures, and there's
Yeah,
a character actor that's made quite a living doing his work in Hollywood for many years, just there to take in the sights. Marsha Clark's there as a journalist, not a prosecutor, as for
right.
Entertainment Tonight, and little old me. That those little I'd forgotten about him, and then I forgot that the judge almost hit me with his car, when he was coming out of the parking lot, and I was trying to scramble to my car and just almost got clipped, but everything worked out fine.
Everything worked out. Um, Hang on, let me look at my notes. Or something else I wanted to ask you about that. Um, Maybe not. That might have been it. Okay. All right. Since the Winona story, since you were there, any of the stories that you told in the book that you just would give anything to have been there? I'm guessing maybe a little of all of them, but was there one that's especially just one that just hits you in your heart that you wish you were there for?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Sinatra Dean Martin story, to have been in the Polo Lounge that night.
Man,
I mean, and there it was late at night. There was nothing, no evidence of it recorded. No
yeah,
photographs. It wasn't like they were being followed by paparazzi or anything. Like so, to have been a fly on the wall for that would have been amazing. Um, there's a scene in the story about the producer Walter Wanger and the actress Joan Bennett, who were married, and she was having an affair with her agent Jennings Lang, and her husband took a shot at him. Um, and to have been a member of the press who assembled at her home the next day when she came out to give a little press conference in the wake of
Wow.
her husband having shot her lover, and trying to spin it and say, I hope the world doesn't think ill of Hollywood and that we're all bad people, because these things don't really happen that often. And to see her try to be composed and as perfect on the outside as she always usually was,
Yeah,
that would have been a moment to be a part of for sure.
that's so cool. Um, what do you think it is about Beverly Hills? Because like you said, it's a small part of Los Angeles, yet a lot of stuff goes down there. Is it just the celebrity element, or is there something else about Beverly Hills? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's, what's really intriguing about Beverly Hills is it's been the home of the rich and famous from the very beginning, from the moment the city converted from being an old, Mexican ranchero
Yeah.
to the landowners not finding oil, so deciding to develop it for residential and commercial use. And they really master planned it, and they built the Beverly Hills Hotel, because the city was like ideally between downtown LA, where the action was then, and the ocean. And so people would be going and they could have a place to stay over. And it was usually wealthy people. And they fell in love with the area because it was so
Um,
green and the hills and lush. So it was, from the 19 teens, it was the city was founded in 1914. It was always for rich people, and
wow.
celebrities found it very quickly. Douglas Fairbanks kind of led the charge of people coming out of Hollywood because it was getting too associated with scandal
Yeah.
and crime. And so, once the movie stars did, then like the moguls and the tycoons, and other industries. And so it always had that air of ritzy, celebrity. Will
Yeah.
Rogers was the mayor and would promote the
Oh,
city, and he had a newspaper column besides doing movies, and he would use Beverly Hills as a dateline, and it made it very famous early on. So people would go to Beverly Hills expecting a degree of wealth, and that means criminals would go to Beverly Hills
right.
expecting to get some extra good stuff if they could get away with it. And that has been the case. Either, you know people with privilege, their passions kind of exploding in a way that somebody ends up dead on the floor, or somebody ends up, in jail. And then people trying to take my joke about it, as I say, when you have everything, you have everything to lose.
True.
and
Yeah,
and I
that's right.
that's what motivates crime. But it's also kind of interesting how those unique white street signs of Beverly Hills
Yeah.
distinguish it from LA, and criminals actually know they're more at risk in Beverly Hills
Wow.
because the city has a pretty well-funded police department,
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's
more
great.
so than most of the rest of this area.
Well, I have to say I love the Alfred Hitchcock story that opens the book because it really sets the tone in a lot of ways because you see how weird anything associated with Hollywood can be, and this is specifically Beverly Hills. But to me, I'm just like that's like the epitome of Hollywood and Beverly Hills. But I love that story. I don't have a question there. I just thought that was a great way to start
Yeah.
the book.
The thing I love about that story, besides, like, I mean, Hitchcock, I won't spoil it, but it's a little
Yeah.
bit of a switcheroo. It's got a great Hitchcock plot twist. Let's put it that way.
Yes. It does.
And
Yes.
and I'm a big Hitchcock fan, and I've just tripped over that story while doing other research. I'd never
Wow.
heard it. I've got a bunch of Hitchcock, biographies here, and never heard of it before. And so I found it. I found photos from the
Wow.
incident, and like I just it was so it was such a metaphor for that moment where you're like, why are they arresting me, or how did they find out what I did? That it set the tone for being at the top, on top of the world, and then all of a sudden having everything potentially yanked away, which in Beverly Hills is that much more traumatizing.
Yes. Yes. All eyes are on people there. Wow. Well, congratulations, Scott. I'm so happy you got this book together because I've heard you talk about it for several years now. So it's a beautiful thing. You guys, Beverly Hills Noir is out Tuesday. Basically, people will it's out by the time this comes out. Go to your local bookstore, support your local bookstore. But if you have to go online, is it pretty much everywhere, Scott?
Pretty much everywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, they can probably get it for you. If you
Yeah,
prefer to, give the independents your money, which I heartily endorse.
I do too. I
Yeah,
do too.
you'll get your hands on it.
Yeah, I'm in
It's
Bangkok,
not
so yeah.
in
Go
the
ahead.
spirit of Beverly Hills Noir. If you can't find it, on the shelves, steal it from somebody.
They can end up in the next book. Who knows?